Hello, my name is Adrijana Višnjić-Jevtić, and I'm an assistant professor at University of Zagreb, Faculty of Teacher Education. Today, I will talk about rethinking the children's agency within families and early childhood educational institutions. So the structure of my presentation is made by 4 topics. The first is the image of the child. Then I will talk about participation as a fundamental right. Then after that, I will try to repositioning the child in society. And finally, I will talk about the role of adults. During this presentation, I will also present you the results of the research I made in Croatia within 2022. So when we talk about the image of a child, we should ask ourselves what the children need. So adults very often think that children need protection, and it became an overprotection. On the other hand, adults are very much aware that children need support, so therefore they should ensure them support in development and in fulfilling their interests and needs. Anyway, most often contemporary parents are described as, for example, helicopter parents or curling parents, or some parents that basically overprotect child without knowledge that risky play and risky activities are very much needed in children's life in order to cope with the contemporary issues. When we discuss about participation in early childhood education, we should know that participation is the foundation for transformation towards a culture of respecting children's rights. And participation is described in several ways, but for this presentation, I will highlight just the 2 levels, and that's policy level and educational level. While we are talking about policy level, of course, our starting point is United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child and based on the convention, there is several national acts that highlight the children's rights, and there is educational policy documents, for example, curriculums in different countries. While some countries put the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child as a national act, as a national law, and therefore the consequences are the same if you break some other laws, or for example that some other countries didn't put that as agenda, as a very important policy agenda. From the another perspective of educational level and children's rights, of course, educational institutions should cherish and nurturing values and principles of democracy and citizenship, while children's rights should be discussed as children's competence to contribute to their own well-being, because child is a child of person of today, not tomorrow. So everything what he or she should fulfill should be fulfilled from the first moment. So each children has a right from the start. When we are discussing a children participation, it can be very challenging for especially adults, because respecting children's participation require a change of perspective. Children's perspective is actually the individual perspective of the child in relation to her or his needs, interest, and understanding of the world, while adults' perspective is basically perspective where adults ask themselves, what could an adult do for a child? So often adults describe children's perspective as adults' interpretation of this perspective, because they come from very limited understanding how actually child think about any of these needs, interests, and understandings, and adults try to interpret that perspective. So while we are talking about this perspective, we are talking basically about the voice of adults and how do parents and how do early childhood education teachers understand this children perspective. Because for respecting children perspective and to respect children participation, adults should be able to accept maybe different kind of view on the certain issues and different understanding, that is the understanding of adults, in order to really respect a child and to ensure that children participation is valued and that what children think or need is seen in the actions of adults. So I will present you the research about the voice of adults, which is a voice of the parents and voices of early childhood educational teachers. The method, the aim of the research was to see adult participation on children agency within families and early childhood educational settings. The research was conducted by the using of focus group, and there was a 2 focus group with the parents and 1 focus group of the teachers. So and parents, all total 18 parents was participate in this research, and there were parents of the children in age of 5 to 7, and their children are enrolled in early childhood educational setting where the research was conducted. At the same way, all teachers that work with those children are involved in another teachers focus group, and there was 7 teachers. After the collecting data, the framework for analyzing this data was used by Landis model of child participation. And what can child decide? So how do parents see agency? So they try to describe what their child can do or cannot do within a family. So somehow most of the parents agree that children can choose play, about company in play, time of play, place in play. On the other hand, we may be questioning that time of play if parents are giving children a lot of other activities than just a play, then probably this activity must frame the play, so they don't have actually the time they think they give the children for the play. They can also choose friends to play or friends to visit and friends to be peers and to support a mutual play and understanding. From the other hand, most of the parents interestingly say that the children can choose the clothes. So they actually give them choices what to wear during the going to, I don't know, to peers, to kindergarten, or to visit to some relatives or something like that. And actually, parents say that children can decide about activities they will choose. So, for example, they can choose to go to gymnastic or to learn a foreign language or to go to some kind of dance school or something like that. From the other hand, there is no really clarified whether these activities are chosen only by the child or this is activities that are chosen amongst many activities or few activities that parents offer to child to choose. So that was not really clear. And what they agree that child cannot decide is about daily schedule, which is basically contradictory to the information that child can decide about time of play. So if we have very strict daily schedule, then it is questionable whether child can actually choose anything within that schedule. They cannot also decide about child safety. So there are some rules that child should follow in order to be protected and safe. They cannot choose about screen time. So how long they can use screens and how long they can use some kind of media, and they cannot oppose to adults. So opposition to adults is something that all parents see that is not actually okay to give a child. So if a child cannot oppose to the adults, then we can question how they can choose activities. Maybe parents would offer some activities, and if a child is not allowed to say that it is not something that he or she wants, then it's not really that they can choose anything, if the adults still have the last word in choosing things and deciding decision that child make. Teachers see very similar to parents what child cannot decide. So for example, they say that they can choose friends to play with, and they can choose activities to play and to explore, but on the other hand, they cannot choose or decide about organization of the environment. For example, toys or equipment, which is also contradictory to the first statements that child can choose activities. Because if a child can choose activity, then we may expect the child should also arrange environment, or spatial or material environment, and for example, friends as a social environment. So if child cannot organize the environment, then it is very questionable whether they really can choose friends or activities to play with. On the other hand, while discussing about the environment, they say that actually now teachers think that children should be at least a question about what toys or what kind of equipment in the outdoor they would like to play, to be more familiar with the space. They cannot also choose a food, because the food is prescribed by some nutritionist, and then what is on the menu is something that child must eat, either maybe skip the meal, which is not allowed. And the third thing, they say they cannot choose the teacher, although in the kindergarten where the research was conducted was a very open space for all activities, so children can move freely. So, but the teachers doesn't see that as a decision on a teacher, but decision about environment where the certain teacher is. So that's the thing that teachers show. So as we see results, children in this research, according to the adults, has possibility of expressing personal opinion. So they have a space for that. They also have a voice, so they can express views through all forms that expression is acceptable to children. But when we talk about audience, about active listening by adults, we actually see they cannot choose about environment or activities or friends, although the adults say that this is something that children can decide. And finally, the influence or acting according to their points of view and needs appropriate to their capabilities is actually not seen, because if they cannot choose the toys or they cannot choose the equipment that will help them in their activities, they really don't have influence. So we may question whether is this a real participation or it's just a parental apparel participation. So here are the challenges in supporting children's agency. So from the other hand, if we support children's agency, we are strengthening democracy, or we are helping to create a good citizen. But from the other hand, adults may have a fear of children's possible decision, because this decision doesn't have to be in line with what adults would like to have. So I would like to conclude that the best gifts you can give to your children are the roots of responsibility and the wings of independence. But on the other hand, I would also like to add to this quote of Dennis Waitley that the best gift we can give to us adults is not to be afraid of that independence. Thank you very much for your attention.